Welcome, students. We're going to start off this semester with a review of arithmetic, which is going to include addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. We're going to look at whole numbers. We're going to look at integers, which include 0 and the negative versions of whole numbers. We're going to look at decimals. We're going to look at fractions, and we're going to talk about order of operations. These are really the foundations for any math class, because anytime we're doing algebra or even geometry, trigonometry, calculus, we need to be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now, some of you are already proficient at this, and this is just going to be an easy review. However, I have found that there are a lot of students that struggle when we've got negatives. And so this is going to give us a bit of context for reviewing, and then also we're going to come up with a rule that we can use whenever we're adding and subtracting numbers. So let's start. Missy and Shannon are two sisters. In fact, they're my sisters. Missy has $45 in her piggy bank, and Shannon has $27 in her piggy bank. Write and evaluate an expression that represents the total amount of money they have together. So Missy has $45 and Shannon has $27, and we want to figure out how much they have together. Well, we know that this represents addition. When we are combining two quantities like this and trying to find the total, we're adding them together. So we've got 45 plus 27. Now, just a quick review, when we're adding integers together, the way that we do this is by stacking them on top of each other and lining them up on the right-hand side. And then we put in our addition sign, and we add going from right to left. So first we're going to start with 5 plus 7. 5 plus 7 is 12. We put the 2 down here, but we've got to carry the 1 to the next column, because this is the ones place and this is the tens place, and when we get 12 here, that 1 goes into the tens place. So we're going to carry that up here, and then we can do the next column. 1 plus 4 plus 2 gives us 7, so we end up with 72 as our answer. So 45 plus 27 equals 72. Not too difficult. Let's move on to another example. Suppose that Missy has $45 in her piggy bank, but Shannon steals $18. Write and evaluate an expression that represents how much money Missy has left. Well, this represents a subtraction problem. If we start off with $45, but then money is taken away, we know that we have to subtract that money. So this is going to be 45 minus 18. This is a classic subtraction problem. When we're subtracting numbers, we set them up similarly, 45 minus 18. But we have a subtraction instead of an addition, of course. And we're going to go from right to left again. We run into a little problem here. We can't do 5 minus 8. So in a situation like this, we're going to have to borrow. We borrow from the 4, that 4 becomes a 3, and then that 5 becomes a 15. And the reason it becomes a 15 is when we change that 4 to a 3, we got rid of 1, but that 1 was in the tens place, so it represented a 10. And so this 5 then gets 10 more, which becomes 15. I think you've all seen this before. I just wanted to give a quick explanation in case it's been a while. Now we can do the subtraction. 15 minus 8 gives us 7, and 3 minus 1 gives us 2, so our answer is 27. And these are both dollars. I forgot to label the 72 as dollars, but there we go. We've had a pretty straightforward addition problem and a pretty straightforward subtraction problem. Hopefully these weren't that difficult. Next, we're going to look at some that involve some negative quantities where it gets a little bit trickier. Let's look at the next example. Suppose that Missy has $300 in credit card debt, Shannon steals her credit card and buys a movie ticket, adding an additional $15 in debt. Write and evaluate an expression that represents how much money Missy has left. We've graduated from piggy banks to credit cards and also petty theft, and the problem's going to be a little bit more complicated now anyways. So Missy has $300 in credit card debt. When you have debt, that means that you actually owe money. So that's like negative money. It's money that you don't actually have. So if she has $300 in credit card debt, we can represent that by negative 300. She actually owes $300, and until she pays it, she has negative money. Now, what's happened here is that Shannon stolen her card and buys a movie ticket, adding an additional $15 in debt. So we started with debt and we're adding more, but remember, debt is negative, so we're going to add negative $15. That's like putting an extra $15 of debt on that credit card. So here we've got negative 300 plus negative 15, and this is no longer as straightforward as the other problems because we've got negatives in them. Now, what we're going to do here to figure out how much debt there is we're going to add 315. Because they're both debts, they're both negative quantities, we add them together. They're both contributing in the same direction, the negative direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the addition, 300 plus 15, to figure out the total amount of debt. We don't put negatives inside these additions. Now let's add. 0 plus 5 is 5. 0 plus 1 is 1. We bring down the 3 to get 3. So we have $315, but we know that that's debt, so the answer is going to have to be negative $315. All right, let's box in our answers. This is something that I try to get in the habit of doing whenever I finish a problem, just so it's clear when we're at the end. So we've got negative $315. So negative 300 plus negative 15 gives us negative 315. This is a little bit more complicated. We're going to look at one more example, and then we're going to use these to come up with a rule to tell us what to do in any situation. Let's move on to the next example.